back, and here we go. So good morning, everyone. My name is Denise Lugo-Fowler. I am the Director of Training and Outreach for Disability Rights New Jersey, and I am thrilled to be the host for this session. I will be monitoring the chat, and I will be supporting our speakers throughout this session. Just a few quick housekeeping items that I'd like to cover. And Mike, I know, covered these in the welcome session this morning, but just want to cover them again. If you would like to, if you could please mute your microphones and turn off the videos during the presentation, that'd be great, just to limit the distractions for now. And if you need any of the captioning, it is set up. So all you need to do is click on across the bottom, the Zoom menu, there is CC or live transcript. Click on that button and it will be available for you. If you experience any technical issues, I will try to help. Just put the message in the chat box or wave me down, and I will try to assist as best I can. And with that, I think that's all the housekeeping. So I welcome our panelists today. Elena Zoniadis, who is the managing attorney from Disability Rights New Jersey, and Amy Brown, who is the director of outreach and advocacy for I Choose Home, Office of the Ombudsman for the Institutionalized Elderly. And with that, I turn it over to them.
Great, wonderful. Thank you so much, Denise, and hello, everyone. I am going to share my screen now and go over a short presentation with you all. One moment. There it is. Share. And oh goodness. I'm having I'm sorry, Denise. How can I watch it in slide view? Oh, there we go, from the beginning. All right. Nursing home transition, finding your home in the community. And again, I'm Elena Zoniadis. I'm the managing attorney for institutional rights for Disability Rights New Jersey. And I'm going to be going briefly over some of the issues that face the population of individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities who are in nursing homes or long-term care facilities. And then Amy is going to discuss transition. So first, we're going to discuss briefly the pre-admission screening resident review process, which is a bit of a mouthful. We often call it Pasar for short. And essentially what that is a tool for identifying individuals with disabilities who might reside potentially in a long-term care placement. And the idea behind the law is to serve as a diversion for individuals who might need specialized services. And then we're going to turn it over to Amy for an overview of nursing home transition generally and the I Choose Home program, which I will also say has helped many of our own clients here at Disability Rights New Jersey find community placement, and then we'll open it up for some Q&A. Okay, so if you're here, you might know this, but just to go over it very quickly, Disability Rights New Jersey is the protection and advocacy agency for the state of New Jersey. The pre-admission screening resident review process. So just to, again, this is just an overview. All Medicaid certified nursing facilities must conduct a Pasar screening regardless of their funding source. In other words, they don't have to be funded by Medicaid. Pasar is a federal requirement. So that means that there are federal statutes that govern the Pasar process, but it is states that implement the Pasar at individual long-term care facilities. In the state of New Jersey, the Division of Aging Services oversees Pasar, and the Division of Mental Health and Addiction Services and the Division of Developmental Disabilities administer the level 2 evaluations, which we'll talk about in a moment. We are going to focus on the IDD population, in other words, intellectual and developmental disabilities, and not mental illness for the purpose of this particular presentation. However, I do just want to say that that is also a population that is covered by the Pasar process. The goal of Pasar is to ensure that individuals who have a disability are placed in a more appropriate setting than a nursing facility and that they receive specialized services. So again, this is a diversion mechanism to avoid people being placed in long-term care facilities when it might be inappropriate for their needs. The Pasar process is 2 steps. There's level 1 screening and level 2 evaluation. At level 1 screening, individuals are screened to determine if they have a disability. And again, I'm using that term very broadly. The statute does narrow down and split between what might be an IDD issue versus a mental health issue. And then there's some other categories as well, but we're just using the term generally here for the overview. And then there's a level 2 evaluation. So if you are screened and determined to have an eligible disability, then an evaluation will take place to determine if you require specialized services. And again, that air quotes around specialized services, that's language from the statute or the law. And those specialized services would make nursing home placement or long-term care facility placement inappropriate. Specialized services are services that go beyond those that are usually provided by nursing facilities, and they would address specific needs that are related to that person's disability. The state is responsible for providing or arranging the specialized services identified by the evaluation. A few final notes. This is a very complicated system. And so we're just giving you the best general information that we can. If you have any concerns about your rights, if some of this sounds either familiar or unfamiliar, you want to know more about it, certainly please contact us. This is the Disability Rights New Jersey information. So we'll just leave that up for a quick moment. We can circle back if anyone needs it again. And I also wanted to provide the New Jersey Council on Developmental Disabilities information. They helped fund the work that we've done for this panel presentation and other related presentations that are going to be recorded and put on our website, and their information is here. So that's some of the context for issues facing individuals who are going into long-term care facilities. Now I'm going to turn it over to Amy to talk about more generally nursing home transition. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Elena. Yes, I think this is a great conversation to have. And I think this is you're speaking about the Pasar and, kind of what I'm going to talk about with the inappropriateness of a lot of the nursing home population, especially, younger folks with disabilities. I think it flows really well together. So let me just see if I can share my screen. Just give me 1 second. Let's see. Okay. Can you guys see that?
Yes.
Great. Okay. Sometimes doesn't always work. Okay. So let me see if I can advance these slides. Hold on just a second. There we go. Okay, so let me just talk very briefly about the I Choose Home New Jersey program and what it is, just to give a little bit of context for what we're doing and why the Ombudsman's office is involved in these issues. So the I Choose Home New Jersey program is a federal program. At the federal level, it's also known as Money Follows the Person. Every state at this point pretty much has a Money Follows the Person program, but every state brands this program in a different way. So we chose to call ours I Choose Home. This program helps to find individuals who are living in institutions like nursing homes, but they could also be living in developmental centers, they could be living in psychiatric institutions, and to try to help those folks move back out into the community with Medicaid supports and services. And one of the best things about this program is that, you know, it's very rewarding to do the individual work and to see these individuals, you know, leaving these institutions and going out into the community. But for every person, you know, there's like a second level, which is for every person that we're able to transition out, New Jersey receives an enhanced payment for those individuals, and all of that money is saved, is kind of put in like a savings account that we have to spend on home and community-based services. So the concept is, in moving out these individuals, we're also generating money to invest in more home and community-based services in the hopes that fewer individuals will end up in long-term care. So just quickly, the successes, we've been involved in this program since 2008. And so far we've moved out about 3,500 people from both nursing homes and developmental centers. Although, you know, I'm just going to speak to the nursing home perspective because that's my role. And I don't, you know, really know the DD world so well. I'd say about half, well, I guess about 2/3 of the folks now that we've transitioned have come out of nursing homes, and another third has come out of the developmental centers. And the program has saved about generated a savings of about $35 million that we've invested in various creative ways to try to keep more people in the community. So I always like to start talking about these issues by just saying, and most of the people on this call I think are already aware, but I like to flag this for all audiences, which is just that the nursing home population is not what you think necessarily. You know, there are more and more younger folks in nursing homes. There are more and more people ending up in nursing homes for a variety of socioeconomic, you know, kind of social crisis type reasons. And yeah, so when I started this work, I thought, oh, you know, we're mostly going to be working with older folks to transition them out. And that just hasn't been the case. About half of the people, and I'll just show you the next slide, about half of the folks that we've transitioned, actually less than half of the people we've transitioned are 62 and older, and then over half are younger than 62, and some considerably older. Like the previous slide, the young woman who's sitting in the wheelchair, Sherry, she's really amazing. She was in a nursing home from age 21 to 23 because she has very severe arthritis. She just wound up there from the hospital, and it took a really long time to be able to get, you know, herself back out to the community with some help. So I definitely want to just flag that, you know, nursing homes, if you're envisioning nursing homes as a space for just elderly people who have dementia and other cognitive impairments and things like that, and physical decline, that's just not really the reality of what we're seeing in the populations that we're working with. I'll talk a little bit about the barriers to transition, and I'm hoping that at the end, when I'm finished, that I'm going to, you know, kind of kick it over to Elena to talk a little bit more about some of these issues. But for us, these are the top 5 barriers that we encounter when we're helping to move someone out. So the number 1 barrier that we encounter is a lack of affordable and accessible housing. As I'm sure everyone is aware, this is a huge problem across the country, but particularly in New Jersey, where housing tends to be multi-level, and a lot of places where it tends to be very expensive. So, you know, a lot of the folks that we're working with, all of the folks we're working with are low income. Some people have SSI only, some people have higher levels of SSD or Social Security, but housing is a barrier for at least half of the people that we're working with, probably more. So we have whole processes set up to try to connect folks who need it. Some people go back with family, and that tends to be a lot easier in most cases because they have somewhere to go and there's someone involved. But especially for our younger folks with physical disabilities who have nowhere to go and who have SSI only as their income, you know, housing is a huge challenge. And we have a whole housing team that kicks in and works with a person, you know, et cetera, to try to help connect them to vouchers, to housing units, to get all their documents together and all of that. I'm not going to dwell long on all of these because, as I said before, perhaps Ellen and I can discuss a little bit more at the end. But the other one that I'll speak about after housing is unresponsive facility or intransigent facility staff. So just to delve a little bit more into housing, also folks sometimes have, they have prior, just negative housing experiences that are following them. So people may have prior evictions, they may have bad credit history, they may have some, criminal history or prior incarceration. That's a real stumbling block when we start to help them with housing. This just kind of complicates some of these barriers even further. And a lot of folks in the nursing home, they're isolated. They're not in the broader community. They're in an institution. And while there may be some folks around, they're really dependent in a lot of cases on the social worker and whether or not the social worker exists, is proactive, is receptive, helps them. And then, from time to time, we also encounter some family conflicts, which I think Elena can probably speak to in a little bit more depth. But, I'd say after housing, the other primary barrier that we face is just, kind of institutional barriers within the facility, and specifically staff not wanting or not being willing to help people transition out. And as you can imagine, they're getting pressured from management to keep people in, especially, right now, post-COVID, the census in the nursing homes is quite low. It's dropped off a lot. So I think now this pressure is even worse, even though I think there's like a countervailing pressure of people, pushing more because they don't want to be in an institution during COVID and they've seen the tragedy that's happened. But, we still have a lot of social workers, and I shouldn't say a lot, some social workers and some facility staff who are resistant. And we have to really, our program staff really has to push to get them to help sometimes a person who wants to move out. In a lot of these long-term care facilities, especially the worst ones, there's a lot of turnover. So sometimes, we go and we educate a social worker or a director of nursing or something, and then one of our staff members goes in 2 months later and a lot of the staff has turned over. So there's this kind of constant need to educate staff members around, hey, you've got residents here who really don't want to be here and don't need to be here. These are the steps that you need to be taking. I mean, they should already know this, but to just, to push them to be doing the right thing and really looking out for the residents. There's also a really big lack of kind of thinking about clinical and social needs before the person moves out. So maybe I'll take a step back and just kind of describe, because I haven't really talked about the process really at all, but just in a nutshell, when one of my staff members is in a nursing home and finds someone who is saying they want to go, we make a couple of different referrals. We refer that person to their managed care organization, because pretty much at this point, everyone who's living in a nursing home who has Medicaid has a managed care organization like Horizon or United, Aetna, et cetera. So we will refer that individual to their managed care organization who is managing their Medicaid to say, hey, we found this person in the nursing home, they want to leave. You need to start being involved in this transition. And we also start pushing on the social worker in the facility. So there's various people who are working different angles to try to get the person out. But one of the things we see, unfortunately, is that with some of the managed care organizations like, United, Horizon, not specifically those, but, just to give examples, sometimes there's just still a lack of a holistic view. What does this person need in the community? What are this person's goals in the community? What are they trying to do? A lot of times we still see social workers and, some of the MCO workers sometimes just like checking boxes, just looking at perhaps the clinical or not, maybe not even doing that so well, but just, kind of focused on the minimum and the basics. But, it could be that this person, really needs some PT before getting out, or they need some occupational therapy to try to get their skills back up to par, you know, before they went in the nursing home. If you're in a nursing home for a long time or any kind of institution, your skills a lot of times kind of devolve because you've got people there either doing a lot for you, or you're spending a little bit more time maybe being sedentary than you would in the community. And again, I'm speaking more to like the older and the younger disabled individuals that we work with. So a lot of times we really have to push the facility and the managed care organization to see that person as a whole and to see all of the things that they may need to get in place before they move. Not just the personal care assistant hours, but other things, transportation, durable medical equipment that they may need. We've had people who, younger people who are like, you know what, when I go out, I want to work. And so we've pushed for the managed care organization to provide them with a desk, for example, or to look to other, things that you might not normally consider as part of somebody's clinical or social needs. So definitely the pushing on the staff and educating them and keeping them, keeping that holistic person-centered view is definitely a challenge. So within the nursing home space, basically what we're doing is we're educating the staff, like I've said, we're educating the residents about their own rights, about their right to be able to leave, to have self-determination, to have a lot of freedom when they're in the nursing home, and the freedom to leave the nursing home. We're trying to help them with housing search, as I said before. So we developed this housing search quick reference guide specifically for folks in nursing homes to start going through the process. What documents do you need to gather? What things do you need to think about? Who do you need to contact? Where can you look up, affordable housing? And to help keep people moving through that process. And I mean, we're doing a lot of work with them and for them, but also to kind of, self-empower too. And just to connect them to any resources that they need. And then, I just kind of wanted to do like a bigger policy slide to talk about, okay, this is all great, but what are kind of the bigger picture things that we need to do to try to keep pulling more people out of institutions, not just nursing homes, but all institutions in New Jersey. We need more holistic Medicaid services to keep people at home. We need a more person-centered Medicaid approach. We need to be looking at more innovative Medicaid policy and services. I know something Gwen says a lot, Elena, probably you too, is the need for other supports that aren't currently considered clinical, like perhaps someone just needs companion services. Perhaps they don't just need the clinical, the nurse, they just may need someone to help them with just those basic socializing, getting out there, having a life type functions that we want people to have, right? When they're in the community. We need more home and community-based services. We need more providers. We need more workers, all of that. And one of the things that's like one of my preaching points is that we need more housing services in Medicaid. We need Medicaid to be thinking a lot more about housing. How can they build housing for our older populations? How can they provide housing services for younger people with disabilities of all kinds? We need, through the Medicaid payment process, to be paying for people to do housing work. We need the care managers asking folks, did you pay your rent on time? What's your relationship with your landlord? Are you having any issues with your apartment right now? How are your utility payments going? We need to not just help people find housing, we need to help keep them in their homes so they're not cycling back into homelessness, institutionalization, and then they come back on our radar again, like, wait, weren't you just in the nursing home 2 years ago and you got out and now you're back? We need more supports in the community to try to keep people in the community. And we need more bricks and mortar housing for all institutionalized populations. And we need, I think that we need Medicaid, to start paying for some of this. And we need the MCOs to start building the housing because they do it in other states. So they should do it here. And I think that's it. So I'll just, leave my contact information here. I'll also put it in the chat, but Yeah, Elena, I mean, maybe what we could do, I don't know how to go back. Oh, I can go back for my slides. I know we do. Do you want to open it up for questions first, or do you want me to kind of ask you for more feedback? I don't know how you want to proceed.
Can I just, first of all, thank you, Amy, but can I just say something quick first before we open it up for
Absolutely.
questions? And this kind of exciting news, I think, but we're at the point of doing our new budget year, and for complicated reasons that are beyond the scope of this presentation, we realize we have some dedicated funding at Disability Rights New Jersey to represent people in nursing homes through transition. I only found that out this week, Amy, so maybe you and me and Lori can have a conversation about how we can really have some warm handoffs and talk about that. Elena doesn't even know this yet. It's a surprise to everybody. But it's not a huge amount of money, but it will allow us to do a little bit more aggressively legal representation of individuals who are going through this process if there are any legal barriers, right? So
Great.
Italy's office does the I Choose Home and does all of that work, but sometimes people have particular legal issues. I'll give an example. A managed care organization, they think that in order to be home, they need 35 hours a week of personal care assistance. But as part of the discharge planning process, the managed care organization authorized 20 hours. Well, I Choose Home can absolutely do advocacy around that. But if somebody needs to appeal that decision through a formal appeal process, it's sometimes helpful to have the assistance of an attorney in that process. So I just
Absolutely.
that more to come. And so that hopefully will increase our ability to be able to kind of do some of that work. And I'll reach out to you more, Amy, to see how we can really facilitate that with your office too in those cases. So I just want to kind of
That's great. That's
breaking
awesome.
Breaking news report. Thank you. Well, one thing I kind of wanted to just ask a question and then answer it, because one of the things that was on my mind was, okay, we have this Pasar system. So if people are being diverted from the nursing homes or the long-term care facilities, then is this really relevant? Is this population actually in a nursing home or long-term care facility? And the answer is yes, because an individual with a intellectual or developmental disability might be identified at that first phase of the Pasar and then not be evaluated to need specialized services. Also, there is currently no database where we can access all Pasar results. So the law is that all individuals must be screened. And then if they pass that level 1, they need to have the evaluation. But there is no way for us as the Protection Advocacy Agency to draw those numbers for analysis to confirm that it's being done across the board. And that's why this issue is so important, because these numbers are really underrepresented. So I just wanted to say what people might be wondering, that's really the bridge between what I talked about and what Amy talked about and why it's relevant.
Yes, I can tell you, I agree 100%. I think the process is, great in theory, but it's very problematic in its implementation. I think, in a lot of cases it's being done. I think in some cases it's not being done. I think in some cases it's being done, but then there's no follow-up. I can only say anecdotally from our experience. I think our experience is that, the number of people with developmental or intellectual disabilities in nursing homes is quite low. Overall, are people with intellectual and developmental disabilities in nursing homes. And a lot of times we will encounter them and they're not really in any system. You know, they've gone out of DDD or they were never there, or, and I don't use, just to be quite frank, like I don't have a very good understanding of like the DD system in the state of New Jersey, because that's not, you know, that's not my role. But, you know, yes, we also encounter a lot of folks with serious mental illness, which doesn't mean that they can't be in the nursing home or that they might not need some nursing home services, but we've encountered tons of folks throughout our time doing this program, younger folks with psychiatric disorders, with, you know, mental health issues, who are in these nursing homes, and that it is just not the appropriate place for them, period.
Right.
So again, you're right. Like, we don't have numbers. We need the numbers. I can only just say anecdotally from our experience that yes, there are a bunch of people who probably should have been flagged and diverted through the Pasar process who are still sitting in nursing homes. And, you know, I have a colleague going out today on a case in a facility where there's like a group, like 30 people who have, you know, mental illness issues, who are being segregated. It's a mess. You know, this stuff exists, and we need to keep chipping away at it so that, you know, so that people like this do not just end up warehoused in these facilities. And that's the bottom line. Like, some of these nursing homes are warehouses for people who were formerly homeless, for people who have mental illness, who have, you know, substance abuse. And I guess in fairness, there's not a lot of housing. So there's not a lot of opportunities, but more could be done. And they shouldn't be living in a nursing home.
Well, can I give a little plug on that,
Yeah.
Amy? So, and we don't have a slide for it here, but if you go to the Department of Human Services Medicaid Agency webpage, the Division of Medical Assistance and Health Services, and I'll try and find it and drop it in the chat. The Medicaid waiver that creates a lot of these programs for transition, including MLTSS and the supports program, is up for renewal right now. And they've already had one public listening session. There's another one next week on September 27th. And then written comments are due on October 11th. There is a small provision in the waiver proposal about nursing facility diversion and transition. We had made a couple of comments way back before we even saw this version regarding what you just talked about. So Money Follows the Person in New Jersey does not cover people with serious mental illness. Just to the best of my knowledge,
It does now. It does now. That used to be a barrier. Now with MLTSS, it's not.
Glad to hear that. And then the other thing is that this is an opportunity for people to comment on how we could be doing this better. Great job. All kudos to you. Your statistics are fabulous. And but how can we do it better? And how can we help people who want to transition out of nursing homes or want to be diverted in the first place, so that they can you know, live lives really of community inclusion as opposed to an institution. So anyway, I will look for that while you go to questions and drop it in the Dropbox if people want to participate in that renewal process.
Another thing that I wanted to bring up was that there might be individuals who came in, and Amy, you kind of referenced this at one point, receiving DDD services, and then they are transferred over to MLTSS. There is some ambiguity about how long someone who's receiving DDD services can be in long-term care placement before transferring over to MLTSS. But once they are transferred over to MLTSS, they would come to you, right, Amy?
Yes.
And if they needed DDD services upon exiting the facility, they would be referred to DDD.
Yeah, and I think that would happen even earlier in the process. Like if we identify someone who has formerly been involved with DDD, then I think we would refer that person quite immediately to the DD transition team that works on, you know, DDD specific transitions and try to get that flowing in that direction. Yeah, I mean, especially when we encounter folks with developmental or intellectual disabilities, we're trying to involve, everyone possible with that expertise, because of course the services, like you're saying, the services are different. The living options are different, right? Like DDD has has 4-person group homes sometimes that they've constructed specifically for these transition, not nursing home, but just transition population in general. So sometimes there are openings there. The DD world is in some ways, I think a lot better equipped to deal with these transitions, because they've been doing it longer and they've been doing housing, and it's just more person-centered and more holistic, I think. So anytime we encounter someone with that type of disability, we're trying to get them to the DD specialist who can best assist them.
Thank you. And did you want me to talk about some of the barriers?
Yeah, I was just wondering, because, I know you tend to deal with, folks with serious mental illness, with people with developmental intellectual disabilities. And I was just curious if you wanted to say anything about these barriers and how you think they may be different or the same for those populations.
So some of the issues that you've identified, like housing, I think that's a systems-wide problem that impacts a lot of different issues that we see, a lot of different populations just having community housing. What I think is particularly noteworthy here is the family conflict piece. So a lot of our clients with IDD either have a guardian or perhaps a power of attorney for medical issues. Mm-hmm. And what I think is very important that we should not lose sight of is that we need to have person-centered planning when we have transition. So while the guardian or the power of attorney might be able to make some legal decisions, we also want that resident, that individual, to have a seat at the table, to be able to voice their opinion and to be a part of the discharge planning, because that is what is going to ensure long-term growth and continued health in the community, and not necessarily what we often see, which is kind of a cycling back to the need for more enhanced services. We want to make sure that the supports keep in mind the desires of the individuals and that we hear their voices. And I think that that's something I just really want to make sure that I underline. I think that a lot of our the guardians that we work with are extremely well-intentioned. They're often family members. They do have the best interests in mind. But if we have a seat at the table for everyone, then it's more meaningful of a transition as well for the individual, for that person, so that they feel heard. The outcome might end up being the same. Everybody might agree, but I do think that there is a very big difference when you feel that you had a voice in where you're going to live and the services that you receive. So I did want to bring that up.
That is hugely, hugely important. Yeah, just quickly, we do deal with residents with diminished capacity who have guardians, typically older folks. And it's always interesting, it's always kind of a struggle, not with every guardian, of course, but with some of the guardians, it's really interesting. You really need to bring, like you're saying, you need to bring it back to the resident. You need to bring focus back to the resident, because a lot of times the guardians are operating from that best interest mentality and standard, which you understand, of course, like they want to be protective, but they need to effectuate the wishes as best they can of the person that they have this power over. So yeah, it's hugely important. I think we still have a long way to go to make this process truly person-centered. Like, just very frankly, like, I don't think that's happening yet. I think we're moving down the road, towards that, but it's slow. It's like a slow change.
So can I just quickly switch topics? Because I see there's a question in the chat box, and I'm happy to take that one. It's about whether
I was just about to bring it up.
Yeah, whether or not someone could get support for purchasing, I believe, I don't know if it's a motorized wheelchair.
Wheelchair accessible van.
A wheelchair accessible van. Okay. So, so for MLTSS, and I believe for the supports program, I'd have to look at the community care program. There is a waiver service for modifications or I guess modifications or purchase. I'd have to look really modifications of vehicles so that they could transport someone who uses a wheelchair. So that benefit is there, and that would be, I think, part of the care planning that would discharge care planning. I think Amy said, you know, get your managed care organization involved right at the get-go so that they can, for people who are on MLTSS, so that that can be part of those initial discussions of the discharge planning. What do you need? We need personal care assistance at home. Maybe we need some simple home modifications, and maybe the vehicle modification or purchase. I have to say, I like to be realistic. I've worked with people who are seeking out that benefit, and it has been extraordinarily difficult to exercise. So the service is there, but you might want to, you know, even you could call Disability Rights New Jersey, and we could help give some counsel and advice on that, and make sure that you really follow that process, because unfortunately it is one of those ones that is, it's difficult. It's bureaucratic. Maybe that's the right word. Is that a good word for it? It's bureaucratic.
Yeah, they don't make it easy.
Yeah, they don't make it easy to get a walker change if your walker works, let alone
Yes, exactly.
accessible van.
But it is possible. It is, but you need, a lot of times you might need that outside advocacy. Just, you know, I know in our program, like home modifications is in the
same thing,
right? Like sometimes people have to get real creative in how they do their home modifications to stay under the limits. But we've seen plenty of people do that, install ramps. And when you have someone proactive in the managed care organization, or when you have another advocate like Disability Rights or the Ombudsman's office trying to help you through that process, it's, you know, it's easier.
And can I just say one thing, because I think it's embedded in Lori's question, and it's one of those things that I like to say every chance I have. So in the question, I should have read it aloud so it's on the transcript. Would HCBW cover, I think really MLTSS, cover the costs of the portion of AT for the purchase of a wheelchair accessible van? And then this is, we've answered that. This is the part that raises another issue for me. Or would that need to come from the payments made to the spouse who provides care to the person with a disability? And I want to address the part of the sentence that says spouse who provides care to the person with disability, because for someone who is on a Medicaid program, the Medicaid federal regulations are very clear. They call those informal services and supports. So in other words, the services and supports that are provided by family members or spouses or friends on a volunteer basis, not through a PPP program, but on a volunteer basis, they cannot be mandatory. They must be voluntary. So if you ever have a situation where the managed care organization is building into the day that a spouse must do something. So you would otherwise be eligible for 35 hours, but the spouse covers the weekend. And so we're not going to give that. That's mandatory that the spouse does the weekend. That is a violation of federal law. You can volunteer, and certainly many people want to volunteer, but they cannot mandate. So I just want to, it kind of was embedded in that question. I wanted.
Yes, Gwen, that they should be calculating the total need, not looking at the need and subtracting maybe what the family can do and then giving you what they think you need, right? That's something we see still all the time. So we've got a
contact Disability Rights New Jersey if you have that.
Yeah, exactly.
And I put our web address in the chat, so anyone can access our information and our Get Help page through our website. So, and with that, we are at time. Elena, you have one more And you
Oh,
want to
I
say?
was going to just put a plug in for our website. We do have a lot of self-advocacy materials up there and it's always growing. And I just want to give a huge thanks to Amy Brown for joining me today. It was
Thank you
really
so
such a
much,
pleasure.
Elena.
And Gwen, our
Yes.
surprise guest.
And I also want to give a huge thanks to the New Jersey Council on Developmental Disabilities, because this work that we've been doing now for about 5 months has been with their support. And it's just been invaluable. And a thank to all the volunteers from NJCDD who reviewed a lot of our materials to ensure that we weren't always talking like lawyers at some, third-year law school class, but that we kept the information easy to understand and accessible and helpful to people. So thanks to those volunteers.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone. And this is the end of the session. Have a great day.